Pastor
All right, last week.
Pastor Scott,
Yes, sir.
could we pray for the missionaries in Haiti, the ones that have been kidnapped?
Wow. What is the update? Do we have any updates?
There's still no update. They're getting impatient, and supposedly Biden is working on something, but they still want $1 million per person.
And this is some
How
gang.
many?
Yeah, it's a gang. It's a gang in Haiti, and 16 people from the States and 1 person from Canada.
And 5
Are
children.
there. There's an 8-month-old baby.
Oh, Lord.
5 of them are children.
Yeah.
So it's amazing.
Lead us in that, would you? Pray for that?
Yep.
Oh, boy.
Lord, there are lots of things that we don't understand, and that's an understatement, I know. And one of them is when people that are representing you are then taken advantage of and persecuted, and we have no idea what's going on with these people, or how they're being treated, or what the outcome will be. But I pray that you would sustain them, give them energy, give them the knowledge and reminder that no one is in control except you. And I pray that you might even work in the hearts of the people who have kidnapped these people, that they might realize that these are people who are wanting to help them, and that's why they came in the first place. And we ask you to protect them and bring them home safely. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
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 Thank you, brother. Okay, again, if you're here for the first time tonight, we're old school. I like the idea of just, we read through it, I'll call out the number of verses we're going to go through, and somebody just starts reading. It works really well, doesn't it?
Yep.
So here we go. Look at chapter 10. Chapter 9 was, luckily, the death of Jezebel. And you would think with the end of Jezebel, we'd be done with Baal worship in the land. Nope. Nope, and we're not done with it now either.
Nope.
It's all over the United States. It's all over the world. By the markings of what Baal worship accomplishes, what it does, its proclivities in the land. It's incredible. And we're going to watch it again. And it's like this infection that the nation cannot shake. And the world can't shake it, because the whole world lies under the delusion, really, of the enemy, the prince of darkness. And it's going to be that way. It's going to actually get worse. Isn't that terrible?
Yeah.
It's going to get worse. And we may be around to see it. But, so, it's nice to read the scriptures, brace ourselves for it. It's where we get our cue for what to expect. And here we go. First 11 verses on it. Chapter 10.
Now Ahab had 70 sons living in the city of Samaria. So Jehu wrote a letter and sent copies to Samaria, to the officials of the city, to the leaders of the people, and to the guardians of the king Ahab's sons. The letter said, "The king's sons are with you, and you have at your disposal chariots, horses, a fortified city, and weapons. As soon as you receive this letter, select the best qualified of King Ahab's sons to be your king, and prepare to fight for Ahab's dynasty." But they were paralyzed with fear and said, "Two kings can stand against this man. What can we do?" So the palace and city administrators, together with the other leaders and the guardians of the king's sons, sent this message to Jehu: "We are your servants and will do anything you tell us. We will not make anyone king. Do whatever you think is best." Jehu responded with a second letter: "If you are on my side and going to obey me, bring the heads of the king's sons to me at Jezreel at about this time tomorrow." Now the 70 sons of the king were being cared for by the leaders of Samaria. where they had been raised since childhood. When the letter arrived, the leaders killed all 70 of the king's sons. They placed their heads in baskets and presented them to Jehu at Jezreel. A messenger went out to Jehu and said, "They have brought the heads of the king's sons." And Jehu ordered, "Pile them into 2 heaps at the entrance of the city gate, and leave them there until morning." In the morning he went out and spoke to the crowd that had gathered around them. You are not to blame," he told them. "I am the one who conspired against my master and killed him. But who killed all these? You can be sure that the message of the Lord that was spoken concerning Ahab's family will not fail. The Lord declared through his servant Elijah that this would happen." Then Jehu killed all of Ahab's relatives living in Jezreel, and all his important officials, personal friends, and priests. So Ahab was left without a single survivor.
All right, what's Jehu's job? What did God tell him to do? Wipe out the house of Ahab. Right? You gotta get rid of every single one. Can't leave one descendant. Can't leave one son. Can't make any more of this family. And what happens right here? What's he doing? After he took out Jezebel, the queen, Ahab's wife, he turns his attention towards all the offspring, all the sons and grandsons. A total of how many? 70. Okay, so, yeah, it's a pretty good list. So, what's he do? Who's he speak to? He sends a letter out. Pretty much to the leadership, the guardians, whoever's in charge of, from the youngest to the oldest of the sons, the grandsons, and says what?
Take the best one, set him up.
Okay.
Make sure he's ready to fight.
Got it?
That's the underlying.
And they all win.
Isn't it interesting? Okay, it's kind of like, you know, to all the elders who should be the spiritual veterans, who should be siding with Yahweh, but they're not. They know better. He does say pretty much, okay, since you've got all the possible heirs to the throne in your respective provinces, pick the best one, you know, to be on the throne. And yeah, get ready, because I'm coming, and we're going to go to war. How's that sound? Because he's pretty much saying, I'm coming to clean house. You know word has gotten to them. It's traveled all over the nation of what just happened with Jezebel. What is their response?
No, we're with you. We're not picking a king.
We'll do whatever you say.
What he
We
wants to do.
won't make anybody king.
Yeah. Pretty smart of them, huh? Pretty wise. And then what? He sends a second letter, and what's he say?
Second
Check him out.
told about killing the 70 sons and the grandsons, all the ancestors.
Yeah, you can make the job easy on me. I'm going to get it done either way, with or without you, right? So I'm going to come get those heads myself, and chances are I'm going to get yours as well. Isn't that implied?
Yeah.
I think you get that. If you don't, or you could just give them, you go through, you lop off their heads, pile them up for me, you know, then I go, yeah, I'm going to count, head count. That's where head count comes from. You do a head count. It's in the Hebrew. It's not, but I think it is. And, you know, it's very interesting. He's like, you know, I'll get them with or without your help. And they comply. Pretty smart. What does it take outside of God speaking to somebody who's finally willing to be the martyr if necessary, to oust an existing evil government and attempt to replace it?
What does it take?
What's it take?
Rebellion. Loyalists.
God.
Oh, that's,
At what point are you going to do it? At what point do you say, enough is enough?
Right now.
You need the charge to follow you.
I am saying right right now, because if we don't stand up against what our government is doing right now, and we have to stand up and be counted,
Yeah.
or it's not gonna stop
It's gonna
there.
get worse. It's gonna get worse.
My daughter-in-law is in the National Guard, and she's having to counsel all her troops now, tell them, you have got to take these shots. She is gonna stand up for those who are saying that it is because of their religious beliefs that they don't want to, that they will not take these shots.
Yeah.
And you know what they're gonna do to these guys that don't do it?
In jail.
No,
Discharge.
they will eventually. They're
Just
they're gonna
honorable.
get other, they'll get no benefits of any kind. It doesn't matter whether they, at their first discussion about it, that they came close to approving, was that they would reduce them in rank each month until the month of June
Wow.
of next year, and then dishonorably discharge them.
See, you imagine all the conversations all around the nation that, you know, are around the dinner table, and there's, you know, parents saying to their kids, you know, the parents that refuse to comply and take the vaccine, that, you know, we may lose this, we may lose this. I mean, that's terrifying for the kids. I mean, we're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of them. Okay,
We're
and-
talking millions of people.
Oh, it's amazing.
That if we, as a church body, do not band together now and start supporting people like Sherry, who's in the same position. How long have you been in the hospital?
10 years.
It's 10 years
Oh,
that is on the line for her by refusing to take the shots. And they're approving half and half of those who apply for
Yeah.
under religious belief. So who's the dictator that's deciding
Who's the dictator?
which ones to disapprove?
yeah.
We have to do the same thing as right here
Yep.
that we're talking about tonight.
Yep.
We've got to do something.
So we're gonna go cut off heads, is that it?
Well,
Yeah.
Get sued.
if necessary.
I'm telling you, it's pretty darn rough. I guess this is just simply, you know, the question I ask you, you gotta keep in mind, and you can't, I trust you can't read this without thinking about our country, and wondering, where's the tipping point? Where does the Jehu finally show up and says, we're gonna do whatever it takes to eradicate what's over us now and replace it, because it is destroying us. It's destroying the families. It's destroying the country, especially the relationship that they had with God. God is their protection. God is their provider. God was their everything. And you lose that relationship with God by your behavior that He forbids, by worshiping, number one, a foreign God, you know, the false God, the devil.
Second commandment.
What do you expect? You know, what kind of relationship are you going to have with God? Mark, what you say?
Jehu stepped in when the prophet showed up and said, this is the word of the Lord.
Right.
You are to be king. He went, got the backing, got the guys behind him,
That's
full
the
steam ahead.
Now, I'm glad you mentioned that, because here's the thing. The word comes from God through Elijah, originally, Elisha, right? Eliyahu, the J-A-H one. The timing is now. He knows he's got God's backing. Nothing like that. Knowing that the God of your ancestors and all the wonderful miracles, everything he already knows about, things that he's already experienced in battle, of God's help, that he can go in and do this. At what point does the church in America finally get confident enough in our God that he's already given us authority? It's already in our Constitution to replace leadership. But who's going to do it? What will it take? The January 6th thing? I don't know what I'm talking about that, but that wasn't even that was just people frustrated.
That was theater.
And, but I mean, there's no attempt to really, we're going to literally lift you up on our shoulders, take you out of the White House or out of the Capitol. Pow! punch you. I mean, there was not that. It's just this, you know, we're going in and we're showing our frustration. So, you know, we're not there yet, but we've talked about this, and people do talk about it, and there's the buzz across the country. Civil War.
Yes.
At what point do you literally get kinetic to take back what has been stolen? Just a thought. I'm not looking for an answer necessarily, but think about it. So, heads are out there by the gate, and in the morning, it says when he went out, he stood and he said to all the people, You are
not to blame.
You're innocent. What's he saying that? Why is he saying that?
Because this was something that God had told Elijah that this would happen and would need to be done. This Elijah already had the word from God.
So this guy takes full responsibility, which is very nice.
Yes. But
But it's interesting. He goes, you know, you're innocent in all this. Don't worry about it. Nobody's going to come after you. You know, you're not going to get in trouble for this. Because the thing about this, there are people in the administration, the current administration of that day,
yes.
that may wonder, you know, is something now going to happen to us? And I think he's pretty much saying, as long as you're with me on this, I did it. I'm not going to, you know, nobody else is complicit. I'm taking the rap, and let's move ahead and reform. It's very interesting.
But doesn't he say to them that this was the word that God had spoken against the house of Ahab?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Oh, yeah. He's, yeah.
telling them this,
Oh, yeah.
that's why he did it.
Yeah. Through servant Elijah, right there, end of verse 10. So, verse 11. Jehu, he kills all who were left in the house of Ahab in Jezreel, all the leaders, all the close friends, all the priests, until he left Ahab with no survivor, which is really, really nice. And that name, Jehu, is we would say, but Jehu, it's almost like Eliyahu. The Lord, he is God. You know, that's Elijah's actual name, Eliyahu. Jehu is, he is God. That's simply it. So, here we go, 12 to 17, somebody.
And he arose and departed, and came to Samaria, and as he was at the shearing house in the way, Jehu met with the brethren of Ahaziah, king of Judah, and said, Who are ye? And they answered, We are the brethren of Ahaziah, and we come down to salute the children of the king and the children of the queen. And he said, Take them alive. And they took them alive and slew them at the pit of the shearing house, even 42 men, neither left he any of them. And when he was departed thence, he lighted on Jenonadab, the son of Rehab, coming to meet him, and he saluted him, and said to him, Is thine heart right, as my heart is with thy heart? And Jehonadab answered, It is. If it be, give me thine hand. And he gave him his hand, and he took him up to him into the chariot. And he said, Come with me, and see my zeal for the Lord. So they made him ride in the chariot. And when he came to Samaria, he slew all that remained unto Ahab in Samaria, till he had destroyed them, and according to the saying of the Lord, which he spoke to Elijah.
All right. So he kills 42 cousins now of Ahaziah. Remember that king? And it's funny. He meets relatives of the king, and he's the king of Judah at the time. And he says, Who are you? And they said, Well, we're kin. We're relatives of the king. We've come down to, visit, see how they're all doing. And right there he goes, I'm going to take you out too. I mean, anybody that smells with rebellion to God of Baal worship, he takes out. Okay. 18. This is so interesting how this works. And you also heard him say, Hey, want to see? Come and see the zeal. He says, that I have. You know, I'm just on fire for God. Watch what I do. Did God ask for this?
No,
Did he ask for the cousins to be taken out?
no, he said just-
Ahab's descendants. Is he starting to go a little AWOL? This happens often. You know, you saw it with Samson. We've seen it over and over again in the scriptures. Somebody gets an assignment from God, and they get so euphoric in it. I think it gets intoxicating. They kind of add to it. And at first glance, you go, oh, he's just doing what God told him to do. And then he kind of assigned it. He said, did you notice this? He said, I'm just doing what God told me to do through Elijah. Well, God didn't say that about these guys. But he lumps them together. And it's as if he's just going a little far. Just watch what continues to happen. 18 to 28, somebody.
Then Jehu brought all the people together and said to them, Ahab served Baal a little, Jehu will serve him much. Now summon all the prophets of Baal, all his servants and all his priests. See that no one is missing, because I'm going to hold a great sacrifice for Baal. Anyone who fails to come will no longer live. But Jehu was acting deceptively in order to destroy the servants of Baal. Jehu said, call an assembly in honor of Baal. So they proclaimed it. Then he sent word throughout Israel, and all the servants of Baal came, not one stayed away. They crowded into the temple of Baal until it was full from one end to the other. And Jehu said to the keeper of the wardrobe, bring robes for all the servants of Baal. So he brought out robes for them. Then Jehu and Jehonadab, son of Rechab, went into the temple of Baal. Jehu said to the servants of Baal, look around and see that no one who serves the Lord is here with you, only servants of Baal. So they went in to make sacrifices and burnt offerings. Now Jehu had posted 80 men outside with this warning. If any one of you lets any of the men I am placing in your hands escape, it will be your life for his life. As soon as Jehu had finished making the burnt offering, he ordered the guards and officers, go in and kill them, let no one escape. So they cut them down with the sword. The guards and the officers threw the bodies out and then entered the inner shrine of the temple of Baal. They brought the sacred stone out of the temple of Baal and burned it. They demolished the sacred stone of Baal and tore down the temple of Baal, and people have used it for a latrine to this day. So Jehu destroyed Baal worship in Israel.
Okay.
Wow.
What's Jehu do now? What's his angle?
He uses a little.
What's he use?
Deception.
Okay, so he says, and where is he doing this?
Isn't he in the temple?
Where's he doing this?
Their temple.
What city?
Oh.
Where's he at? Same place?
Yeah.
Is he still in Samaria?
Mary.
Now he's just knocked off a bunch of people. I don't know if the people of Samaria know it, because he killed these folks on the road. So he keeps going towards Samaria, and he goes right to the temple. And he pretty much says what? You know, Ahab, he didn't really give his all to Baal. He offered Baal small service. Wait till you see what Jehu's going to do. And he's going to deceive. And, you know, all the followers, the priests of Baal, they like what this guy is saying. They're thinking, hey, somebody's going to maybe take us up a notch. And he summons them all. You know, come to this worship service I'm going to hold for Baal. You know, you ain't seen nothing yet. Is that what he's doing? Mm-hmm. Now, do you remember, it kind of reminds me of, you know, how Samson, his life ended. There he is in the temple of Dagon, and calls all the Philistines, or all the Philistines are called together, not because Samson called them together. He's a prisoner at the time. Right. But he brings them all into their temple. God does. And unknowingly, they're there thinking they're going to offer worship to their God. And Samson's the laughing stock. And Samson, of course, who's blind, his hair's growing back. He says to somebody, help me find the pillars. I need to lean on something. And whoever's watching over him, the soldier over him, puts him right where he needs to, and he feels these columns, and then he prays, God, would you just give me one more time the strength? Just one more time. Because he knows what's going on. And because it's that desperate, where he says, as if he's got it now. And remember, he killed more people in his death, right there at his death, than he did all the years prior. Right? And Jehu, it's interesting, he gathers everybody again in a pagan temple. And then, go through this place and make sure there's no
Christian there.
Yeah. Make sure there's no real Jew in here that somehow slipped in or really shouldn't be here. Get him out, and then he has them slaughtered. What's disconcerting is what comes next. Somebody read 28 to 31.
However, he did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit, the worship of the golden calves at Bethel and Dan. The Lord said to Jehu, because you've done well in accomplishing what is right in my eyes, and have done to the house of Ahab all I had in mind to do, your descendants will sit on the throne of Israel to the fourth generation. Yet Jehu was not careful to keep the law of the Lord, the God of Israel, with all his heart. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, which he had caused Israel to commit.
Did you catch that? What just happened? What happened to Jehu? You better answer, otherwise Sharon's going to answer all your questions tonight. What is it? What happened?
You went from one idol worship to another idol worship.
Jehu's I've got all this zeal for God. You got to watch out when you get a little cocky, don't you?
Yep.
You get a little overconfident in yourself, and you start to be blind to where you may be going and where your heart may be leading you. You get a big head, and pretty soon you leave God. Ask yourself, have you not had times where you felt very close to God, you got a little overconfident, and there's some things you started to slack in, and before you knew it, you're now far from Him. And you go, how did that happen? Well, pride comes before the fall. And so here's Jehu. He's been doing great. But it says pretty much what you caught there without all the details. He does what almost every single king in both the northern and the southern kingdom which have done. Even if they started good, they end up, for some reason, following a false god. He pulls out these golden calves. Did you catch this? Wait. This is the guy that just turned this temple of Baal into a latrine. Okay, which historically was literally you flatten it to the ground and then you get all your soldiers to come and defecate on it. And then it becomes like the community, septic tank. And the idea is that they've just respected the place. As they say, if you want to make sure Muslims don't build a mosque on a certain place, you kill a pig on it.
Yeah.
It's that same kind of a thing. They made it unusable by doing that. Now this guy, who was saying how zealous he is, and he's doing his thing, look how he ends. He falls away. Is there any guarantee any of us are going to stay strong to the end?
No.
That's a scary thing. And I got to think about it myself. I go, am I going to stay strong to the end? Probably the biggest mistake I could make is thinking, oh yeah, I will.
Yeah.
When you start getting confident, you stop guarding your weak spots.
Mm-hmm.
You been there? And we see this with leaders over and over again. I think based on his past performance with God, look at what I did. I am a hero. You know, in his eyes, I'm the one who finally ousted Baal worship. And it's amazing how the devil can use that. And it's not Baal worship per se, it's pride that sets a hook. What happened to Solomon? The most blessed, wealthy, wise king, and God said, man, I'm going to be your daddy, you're going to be my boy, I'm going to bless you, I'm going to give you all these things, but don't do this. You know, don't do that. Don't take extra wives for yourself, because they will lead your heart astray. And it's so interesting that Solomon, again, you look at the scriptures that he wrote. We have Proverbs that I think he wrote in the prime of his life. He's walking close to God. Then he's got Song of Solomon, which is, again, it's a bit X-rated. It's actually his, it's where his heart was starting to turn. Because if you don't really understand Song of Solomon, it's not a love letter between Solomon and some woman that he loves. He's already got 700 women in his harem. It is actually, if you look carefully, he is on the outside of a love triangle. And he's describing a relationship between a woman that he wants to add to his harem who loves her shepherd boy back home.
Right.
And it's artistic. Solomon, he was a writer. He was a poet. And he writes this artistic story, fictional or not, you know, we don't know. But he writes this story, and he's looking in, and it's just kind of a little twisted. Do you understand? Because of where he's going. And then we know what's recorded of him and where he falls. And all these concubines he had brought in, he had married, who had brought in the worship of their foreign gods. Solomon allowed them, he built for them a little place where they can worship their foreign god right there in the country. Wait, this is the guy who finished the temple, the son of David, who he's the one that God said, I've chosen your son, David, who's going to be Solomon, to finish a house for me. And then there was that incredible, dedication service when God shows up and that cloud's so thick, everybody had to stop and everybody just got quiet because God literally showed up like he did back in the wilderness. The cloud by day, it's in the temple. What other king had that experience? And that guy who builds the temple of God before he's dead builds hundreds of shrines for these false gods. How did that happen? And then he writes Ecclesiastes, which I say that's his midlife crisis.
Yeah.
Which is why the guy who wrote Proverbs says, vanity, vanity is all vanity. What's the use of it? Man, I've had sex, drugs, and rock and roll. None of it makes me happy. That's chapter 1. And then he goes through for 13 chapters of just hating life. He hates his life. He's looking back over his life and he cannot remember one good thing. Did you realize that?
Yeah.
He's putting question marks on everything he put exclamation marks on in Proverbs. Here's wisdom. Seek after it, right? Hang it around your neck. And now he's saying, what's the use of wisdom? He says, I've lived all the years, and I've seen godless people live longer than godly people. I've seen, and totally opposite of Proverbs. What happened? His heart had already turned. He left God. He was already going after false gods and leading his country to do the same. Over and over again. This was the warning of God back in the beginning with Samuel. Okay, they want a king. They want a human king like all the other countries. All right, they're not rejecting you, Samuel. They're rejecting me. And boy, they're going to pay for it. Not just for one king, Saul. It's throughout the rest of their history. What is our problem in America? The same as theirs. What's our problem right now? We have a king who has nothing to do with the God of the Bible.
There you go.
No wonder the world, or the nation, looks like it has nothing to do with the God of the Bible. And this started earlier with prior kings that we have. When we have godly kings, Reagan, things get better. I mean, hey, bring on Washington, Lincoln, those were the days. Trump,
Look who we
Sure
have
like
in our
Trump.
Congress. Look who we have in our Congress, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah.
as goes the king, so goes the kingdom. Sure.
But we forgot that our Constitution means we, the people.
We, the people of government.
The president is not king. None of them in government are king.
He doesn't
We
know
are
that.
the king, and that's what we forgot. And that's what we need to get back.
How do you convince a nation of that truth? It's pretty tough because they've been conditioned for how many years now to look to, and the media has fed it too. It just drones this thing that he calls a shot, executive order. It's whatever the Senate and the House decides, whatever the Supreme Court decides, and then we all must comply. Well, no.
No.
Though things are a little sticky when, what we've got is the ballot box to make the adjustments required, but now that even is tampered with. What do you do with the Dominion voting machine? What do you do now? It's pretty rough, right? It's pretty rough. So, that almost brings us back full circle to, that's where the days of Jehu come, where you go, there's no fair votes anymore. There's not a good godly person to put on the throne anymore. Let's do it ourselves. And it's the march to the capitals, and it's ousting, these folks. Interestingly, though, he's making room for himself. But then he does what so many in power do.
They become corrupt.
It corrupts,
Yeah.
right?
Power.
That's the problem. And so again, like we just talked about with Solomon, you get a guy like Jehu, who again is one of these on fire, zealous people for God, cleaning house. We're going to put God back on the throne. He himself begins to lead the nation right back down the same trail that they just got up.
Yeah.
Intoxicated with power.
Intoxicated with power. Tell me.
And the other thing that comes to my mind is, what is it called? When you leave room for somebody to continue practicing whatever they were practicing before when they come into your country, as opposed to having them assimilate.
Yep.
Yeah.
Concession.
Okay, so that's a big problem with our nation, is that we did not make assimilation more of a mandate. We provided lip service to it for a lot of years. It used to be just expected, normal. But as the years marched by, not so much.
Right.
We are Americans, not Black Americans, not Muslim Americans. We are Americans. We're supposed to learn the language and live by the laws of the land.
Yep, right. That's true.
Yeah, and even the assimilation of foreigners, we have not even brought up our children
Right.
and our grandchildren to know what it means to be an American, to know the law, to know the Constitution, to know their
Our
privilege
history.
of being a king in their own country. That's the problem. We've gotten so far away from it, nobody knows truth anymore.
Yeah, it is.
Everybody knows lies, that's it.
Yeah,
We're complacent.
yeah.
We became too comfortable.
We've been boiled in the water for a while.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, many years went by, if you've noticed, before this finally took place. God is patient. God just kind of waits. He'd prefer some other route. And it's interesting that he waits as long as he does before using Jehu as his instrument of his wrath. The scriptures say like his judgment slumbered while his mercy is extended to a rebellious nation. How else do you explain that we're not destroyed?
Yeah.
With all we've done wrong, all the innocent blood shed in our country, are you kidding me? His judgment has slumbered. Why haven't we been nuked a long time ago by whatever means God may have, whatever tools of judgment? And it should keep us on our toes. I mean, we should be thinking, for the sake of everybody else who doesn't know better, we would help save them from the judgment of God that would come on our nation. I would argue, I think all of us would believe we are under some judgment. I think we're under the passive judgment of God, not the active judgment of God yet. The passive judgment of God is what happens when God simply removes his hand of protection off a nation. So we're under the passive judgment of God. We get what we deserve. We are reaping what we've sown. The active judgment of God we will know when we're under the active judgment of God. There is a big difference. And it's going to be a Jehu comes riding in here. You know what I mean? Okay, so. Well, Jehu's going to die. Somebody 32 to 36, please.
In those days, the Lord began to reduce the size of Israel. As they overpowered the Israelites throughout their territory, east of the Jordan and all of the land of Gilead, from Aurora by the Aaron Gorge through the Gilead and the Bashan. As for the other events in Jehu's reign, all he did and all his achievements they are not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel. Jehu rested with his ancestors and was buried in Samaria. And Jehu,
that guy.
yeah,
Luke.
His son succeeded him as king. The time that Jehu reigned over Israel and Samaria was 28 years.
Okay.
28 years.
Verse 32, in those days the Lord began to trim off parts of Israel. Call that active judgment of God. He starts to parcel things out. He starts to give you to other leadership. Not godly leadership, not necessarily. Since you don't know how to take care of your country, I'll give it to somebody else. And they may not take care of it either, but it's no longer in your hand. Think about that. Do you ever feel like you're losing your rights? Well, when a country starts to feel like it's losing its own sovereignty, its borders, God is trimming off the outsides. You know what it means? The border is collapsing.
Yes.
People are coming in that shouldn't be. People are leaving. You know, it's like things are shifting. Uh-oh. Smells like, where we are. We can, right? The Bible's a mirror. Chapter 11, there is now a new king, and he's a kid. And I think we can open this. Okay? Let's go the first three verses.
When Athaliah, the mother of King Ahaziah of Judah, learned that her son was dead, she began to destroy the rest of the royal family. But Ahaziah's sister Jehoshaphat, the daughter of King Joram, took Ahaziah's infant son Joash and stole him away from among the rest of the king's children who were about to be killed. She put Joash and his nurse in a bedroom, and they hid him from Athaliah, so the child was not murdered. Joash remained hidden in the temple of the Lord for 6 years, while Athaliah ruled over the land.
Okay, so the queen mother, Athaliah, remember who she is?
Yep.
She's the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel. And now she's gotten older. I mean, that's you got to kind of keep in mind because you see these names come back. Well, a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades later. Okay, the conveyor belt of people and the people in power. So now Athaliah is is the queen. And who does she knock off?
The royal heir.
She wants to knock off every member of her own family.
Yep.
She wants to kill any possible successor to the throne, any threat to her being on the throne. Remember, she had her son try to do that, and then he got knocked off. I mean, this is just how it goes. This was in the family. Jezebel, her mom, tried to knock off Elijah. This is what they do. It's all in the family. Okay? So, she looks like she gets them all but one. Kind of like a little baby Moses story again. Somehow, with all the boys are being attacked, to be killed, somebody scoops up one, hides that one. And this little one, who takes him?
The nursemaid.
Joash.
Yeah, Joash is the
son.
Yep. She puts him out with the priest.
Because God has to keep his promise to David, right? Because this is the southern kingdom. So God has a promise to David. And this is just, again, watch this. This is how God does it. Even he keeps one alive. Because he said to David, I'm going to make sure a descendant of yours is always sitting on the throne. Here he is. Joash, okay? His name, Yoach, given by God. That's his name. Given by God, like a gift of God. It's actually his aunt. It's a half-sister to Azariah. It's the wife of the high priest of the day, which is really interesting. And you read about that in Chronicles, but not here. Again, the 2 Chronicles chapter 22 to 24 covers this era. And there's redundancy there, there's added information, usually in Chronicles you don't get here. It is almost 8. So that will set us up for what happens. We see now that in the midst of the purge, and it's too bad that Jehu, he goes sour before the end, but now there's like, a little redemption again. We've seen this over and over and over and over and over and over and over. God will take somebody, even though he knows when they get older, they'll turn. Did God not know everything about all the kings that we've already been studying? It's the ones that started good, and then they end bad. Did God not know that? Then why did he call them to begin with?
For his purpose.
It's the same with us. He knows us too.
They're by a page in the book.
God usually uses you while you're usable. And you make yourself unusable. And that's when you can have a bad ending. Or, in the middle of the book, you could have a bad chapter. But, it's okay to have a bad chapter as long as the book has a good ending. You ever read a book there's a bad chapter, but it has you go, what is this doing in here? In a book with a good ending. See, that's okay if that shows up. The problem with so many of this is that you got some good chapters and then there's a really bad ending. I hate movies like that. They're tragedies. I hate books like that. And
You know how this one ends, for sure, though, with 3 words.
Thy will be done. Yeah, that's how it should be. Yeah. So, something to consider as we then look at next week what happens with this king. And for the next 2 chapters, he's going to take center stage. And it's amazing what he's going to do at the beginning. He's going to clean house too. He's going to clean house. They're going to pulverize some of the altars. We'll see it next week. But, why doesn't God just give up?
That's right.
over and over. And I kind of wonder, when do we say, oh, I'm sick of this? That it looks like God, Yahweh, the truth, the real religion, whatever, is going to finally rise and remain. We all live happily ever after, and that's not happening. Because we're at war. We're in a spiritual war. We were born into a world at war. It was a war before any of us were born. It is a spiritual war. It began at the very beginning, which is amazing. And that God even knew that at the beginning. Maybe he likes, war stories. We think War and Peace is a long book. I mean, look at this thing. You think the constant jockeying of position in the history of both Judah and Israel. And it's this, God's on top. No, now Baal. God's on top. Baal. And I hate to say it, but when you look at most of the years, who's on top? Baal's on top. Not because Baal's more powerful.
No. It appeals to our
It's
flesh.
because people to whom God gave the earth to be, let's say, kings and queens of, have surrendered it to Baal. When Adam and Eve took a bite of the forbidden fruit, I mean, you got to remember what happened here. God gave them dominion. God said, you have dominion, you conquer. You cut back the jungle as it grows, you thin the herd, whatever. This is your plan. You got the deed. When they left what God said for what the devil said, they not just fell themselves, they actually transferred the earth to the kingship of the devil himself. And that's not heretical. That's how it is. If that's not the truth, then why the rest of the Bible? Why is the vast majority of humankind headed into hell? If that's not true. So the devil's in charge. And, you read the end of the book, chapter 19 of Revelation, Jesus is going to show up. And he's going to take that ancient dragon, that serpent of old, the devil and Satan himself, cast him into the abyss. This is going to be a wonderful day. So, we're in a world at war. What we see happening there in the Bible, we've got to open our eyes. It's happening in our country. It is happening in the world. In every nation, either God's on top or the people have allowed another religion, whatever, on top. And people are deceived. But when humankind becomes saved, when we get restored, even though we're not perfect this side of heaven, that group, if they become the majority stakeholders in a country, if it can somehow become the primary religion, the faith, Christianity in the country, look at what happens. You don't get a perfect country, but you get something like America. Think of how it started. You think of the liberties. You think of all that we've got. Wonderful. Korea, South Korea. It became, I think it still is today, the largest Christian nation per capita. It's the largest Christian nation on earth. And in the last 10, 20 years, there's been some shifts as the youth have been enamored with the youth culture of America.
Wow. Ooh.
Because there was a beautiful thing with the culture, the family structure, the respect. What comes with the Oriental culture is just, it's tremendous. And Christianity in 1901, when it got in there, took Seoul, Korea through Sam Anderson. Samuel Anderson? He's a missionary that brought it in. Christianity exploded. And that was the funny thing. And I think it was, we were sending missionaries to South Korea, and I think it was in the 90s, the Christian church in Korea said, of all the places in the world they wanted to send missionaries from Korea, they want to send them here to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Because of where we went, where we are. Well, look at where we are now. So, that's our, this is the explanation of why we see what's in the scriptures and why we see what's on the earth today. And it won't stop until the Lord returns. But we're going to toe the line.
We are.
Going to
Let's do what we
soldier
can.
on.
Let's keep fighting. Because we don't want America to go down.
No.
And, I know I said on Sunday, I said, I think it's over for us. That doesn't mean I'm not going to fight to keep it.
Right.
You do what you can. And there's always a chance to resurrect this thing. But,
With God's help.
you look at the record, and usually it's going to take some pain.
Yes.
We're going to feel some squeeze, some loss. Some wild things, tragic things may start coming. But if it would lead to not our captivity and our subjugation, but our refinement, so that we're usable again, hey, it's okay. I'll close with this. We all know, 9/11, there was, for a moment, for a month, I thought I died and went to heaven.
Yeah.
As horrific and scary 9/11 was, now we've seen the loop of the tape so many times, the planes in the building, that sickening, horrific thing when you first saw it in here that you saw the evil, you just go, the devil's on the earth, That's starting to go away because you've seen it so many times, we've been desensitized to it. Nonetheless, when that first happened, that caused an amazing reaction from America.
Yeah.
And, the church I was at in Hawaii, you want to double the next Sunday, you have a 9/11. Now, it was short-lived.
Very short-lived.
Surprisingly.
Because what did people want? It's not that people wanted God really. For a moment there was, oh God bless America, because you look at we're under attack, and it's your Hail Mary, you're going to reach out to God, and I think most churches were not prepared for it, and didn't have answers for the folks. But even the churches that did, I didn't see any lasting, and I didn't hear of any lasting fruit, as we'd say, with those churches. Because America we didn't hurt enough.
No.
You'd think so. But actually, we didn't suffer. We saw something, and we went up. That was hell on earth. That was horrific. Oh my gosh, and the heroes and the firefighters and all that. But all but, the 3,000 died. We didn't experience it.
Right.
Nobody flew a plane into my house.
Right.
And it may require some more acute pain that becomes a little more personalized for Americans to go, I need more than a month going back to church.
Yeah.
I have a fear that the next 9/11, and one will come.
Yeah.
And if you've been following some of the news of who's trying to come across the border,
Yeah.
you could just brace yourself for it. Brace yourself. There is also a secondary human response to a second devastating event. The first one is a humbling, a shock, a bargaining with God or whatever somebody's looking towards. What do I do to get right? And all of a sudden you have your priorities. Oh, I love my family. You want to gather the hens, you want to gather your kids. And, oh, I love you so much. And then all of a sudden you kind of forget and you go back to life. And that's what people did.
Like the normal.
The second time that 9/11 may come, people can do this. They can have this kind of thinking. Instead of what I just described, it can be a eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. And then America actually tanks faster, and it's a race to the bottom in behavior and everything else. Because for all they know, they can die tomorrow, so they gotta go for it all with all the gusto they've got and pull what they can out of earth, you know, feel what they can, get all the, see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So, but we're here to be light and salt. Try to make sure that don't happen. Okay, we good?
Good.
Thank y'all for coming out again tonight. Hope to see y'all Sunday morning. And we'll pray, Sharon, we'll praise him.
My Father, I just thank you so much for being with us. Thank you that we still have the freedom to worship and to pray. Thank you for your love and your forgiveness and for dying on the cross for our sins. Your grace is just unbelievable and your mercy. And what I have learned tonight, Lord, is it just shows what can happen to anyone and even to me. Help us, Lord, to not be deceived, but to give us the strength to always follow you. And Lord, I'm just so grateful that we can be a church, even tonight, and on Sunday mornings and for other times. I just praise you for that and for all the Bible studies and what we have learned. I just pray for our country. Oh God, I don't even know what to pray, Lord. You know that our country is in trouble. And it's not what we agree with, what's happening, especially the sacrificing of our children and the babies. This country has sinned greatly. And we just give it to you, Lord, in a humble way. We ask for your forgiveness. And help us here, as sisters and brothers in Christ, to do our part. And to do what we can. Help us to be on our knees daily and to look to you for guidance. Thank you for your word, that we can study it and see what's really going on. But we need your strength. And thank you for Pastor Scott for giving the message tonight. And we just ask you to bless him. I know it's Pastor Appreciation Month, and I'm just so grateful for all that he has given us, himself, Lord, in his messages, and for speaking through him. Lord, help us to listen to your word and to heed it and take it seriously into our lives. And thank you, Lord, for each one that's here. Bless each life. Be with those that are going through some tough times. There are people here, their jobs are just barely hanging on because of the exemptions. And just be with each family. Protect us all, grant us traveling mercies, and thank you for this time together. We just give it all to you, and we give our country to you. We ask for your mercy and grace. And I know you have given that to us, and I thank you so much for it. But again, we are pleading with you. You're the only one that can help us. In Jesus' name, I give this all to you. Amen.
Amen. Amen.